Circuit Court Division CRI in Fort Duval County and the state of Florida is now in session. The Honorable Russell L. Healy is presiding. Please turn off all cell phones and electronic devices at this time. The use of cell phones, cell phone cameras, photographic, recording, or electronic devices of any kind is absolutely prohibited. And they must be turned off while court is in session. Credentialed representatives of the media who have gained approval from the court may use laptops, iPads, and tablets provided. However, they are not to be used for photographic and or recording purposes. There will be no talking while court is in session. For justice to be served, the jury must be able to stay focused on the court proceeding. Therefore, talking or disruptive behavior by anyone in the audience will not be tolerated. A violation of any of these rules will result in you being removed from the courtroom. And you may be seated.
Good morning, everybody. State ready to proceed?
We are, Your Honor.
Defense? Oh.
We are ready to proceed, Your Honor. There are a couple of housekeeping matters. Yep. There is, of course, I am renewing our previous motions and objections on the grounds that we previously argued. I'd specifically like to address my objection to Dr. Simon's testimony, since I anticipate that she's going to be witness this morning in terms of her testimony, in terms of the use of the dowels and trajectory and position of the corridor and the decedent. And I again rely on the arguments we previously raised in the hearing that we had on this issue pre-trial, Your Honor.
Anything the state want to add? Or?
Well, briefly, Your Honor, she has placed the dowels in bending. I'm happy to have her bring that in now so we don't have to stop. One very short witness and then straight to Dr. Simon's. It's right here in the anteroom because I want to make sure that I don't know whether Ms. Hannity has seen the photograph or video of that from the prior trial that you allow her to.
I'm not sure that the objection is the dowels in bending.
No, I was renewing my objection in reference to the other part of...
I'm ready to address that as well.
It more relates to Dr. Simon's, I guess, sitting in the car.
That's correct. And
Judge, we don't intend to show any photographs of Dr. Simon in the car. All she's going to do is look at the 3 photographs that have been stipulated in for both sides to use, is my understanding. If you recall, there's 3 in a row. It shows the door fully open, 45-degree angle, completely closed, I believe. I'm going to ask her which of those is most consistent with the tracks in his body that she found. And I believe that that is a common sense matter, not a matter of scientific evidence as far as the dowels in the door, because the dowels were placed in the same exact position that the evidence technicians had put them in.
Okay.
Your Honor, just for the record purposes, we stipulated to the introduction subject to our objections, which Your Honor had already ruled on.
Well, the photographs were never objected to.
Anything dealing with those...
with the dowels. Yes. The photographs have never been objected to, but I'm hoping the record's pretty clear on your objection to that portion of what Dr. Simons may say. And I previously ruled that your objection is overruled. And my rulings stand as to all prior objections and or motions. Mr. Dunn, if you'd raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I did that Saturday, and then at the end of the day, I forgot to ask you any questions, I guess. Anyway, are you satisfied with your counsel's representation of you up through Saturday? That is Ms. Hanania, Ms. Abel, and Mr. Carlisle?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Also, I guess for the record, since it's not on the record, the transcript that was requested by the media was prepared over the weekend. I reviewed it. I redacted it. I sent it to defense counsel and counsel for the state. They reviewed it and had no objections to or additions to the redaction. and they were in agreement that it could then be forwarded on to Mr. Gable. Is that correct, Mr. Guy?
It is.
And Mr. Carlisle?
Yes, sir.
All right, and then additionally for the record, as I think I suggested, the two of our local television stations actually interviewed live on camera, I believe, both the author of the article and the potential juror, who's referenced as juror number 30. Both of those folks were actually interviewed on camera, so the situation was something that obviously the media knew about. Quite frankly, they knew about it before we did. Anyway, that's just for the record. So, we ready to go?
Judge, one other quick thing. In the last trial, the defense attorney requested that the knife be open. I do not intend to open the knife, so I didn't want to address that in the middle of Wendy Meacham's testimony. So I'm just putting the court on notice of that. There's an outline of how far the blade goes out, but I didn't know if Ms. Hannah was going to want it open because Ms. Meacham's not going to be comfortable opening it, and I don't intend to open it. So I don't really care, Your Honor, whatever they try to do with it.
Well,
We're not going to be requesting that they open it if we decide to do so.
Yeah, you can do whatever you'd like. You had one other thing?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to address the fact that I know that you previously read parts of the expert witness instruction.
Yes.
And the first time you read it, Saturday, you read the full instruction, and then because we had others, you just kind of summarized. Because it's a new day, Your Honor, I'd like for the full instruction to be read again at that time. And the only other thing is that I would also ask, Your Honor, to caution the audience. I anticipate the medical examiner's photos will be visible to the audience. It's just caution the audience about any emotional or visible or audible responses in front of the jury.
And Your Honor, the stipulated ID has to be read by the court.
That's correct.
The doctor.
Yeah, I don't have that. Does somebody have that ready? And is there a particular point where you want me to do that?
I believe right after we asked that you qualify as an expert, and Judge, my questions on that are very short, so I would hope, I am requesting that the defense not stipulate. I just want to get through it in case there is an issue on the record later on about the defense's objections for her qualifications. So,
Okay, I understand. I've got the expert witness instruction. I've got the stipulation. I forgot what else I had to do. Or something popped in my head and now I've forgotten it.
Cautioning the audience.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, not the first witness, but the second witness will be the medical examiner, Dr. Simons, and I anticipate that during the course of her testimony, there'll be numerous photographs shown of Jordan Davis, and they will obviously be up on those large monitors there. I just caution you, I don't want outbursts, I don't want shows of emotion. If you feel as though you think you might not be able to handle something like that, then you can excuse yourself now and you can go across the hall into the overflow courtroom where those things will also be shown and you can hear and see what's going on. And then if you had an emotional situation, it just wouldn't be in front of the jury. We just can't have that kind of thing. So kind of check yourself at this point, and if you think you're fine, then that's good. Just be aware of that. All right, so can we bring the jury in, Mr. Guy? Or Miss Corey?
Yes, sir.
Miss
Yes, Your Honor.
Hannah? All right, bring the jurors on in.
Jurors enter the courtroom.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You all can have a seat. You all look bright-eyed. So I trust you had a nice day of rest yesterday and visits with family members and children, perhaps. So hopefully all that went well. Looks like everybody's nodding, so that's good. We're ready to resume, and the state will call their next witness, Ms. Corey.
Wendy Meacham.
Wendy Meacham, please. Ma'am, if you'll come up to the front and raise your right hand, the clerk will administer the oath to you.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, ma'am, if you'll come right around this way for me, please. And watch your step there. And then you can adjust that microphone as you need. Just pull it to and be sure and speak loudly into it so we can all hear you. Ms. Corey?
Yes, Your Honor. Tell these jurors your name.
Wendy Meacham,
Can you spell your last name?
M-E-A-C-H-A-M.
What is your occupation?
I'm a forensic investigator with the medical examiner's office.
Here in Duval County?
Yes,
What is a forensic investigator?
we are with the medical examiner's office, and we are the ones that take in the information and provide the information to the medical examiners.
And were you working there in November of 2012?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you working under the supervision of all of the medical examiner and assistant medical examiners, and specifically Dr. Stacy Simons, in November of 2012?
Yes,
And in your capacity as a forensic investigator, do you assist the medical examiner in documenting and collecting any personal belongings of the decedent?
yes,
And are all of those items kept under a specific medical examiner number?
yes.
How are those items packaged to be turned over to the law enforcement agency handling the homicide investigation?
They're packaged in an evidence bag.
And is the medical examiner number that's assigned to the particular decedent, the person who's been killed, is that then labeled on each one of those items?
Yes, it is.
Once those items are packaged, what happens with each of those?
The items are logged into our system, and they are held in our evidence room until the detective, which is normally the lead detective, picks the items up.
Does anyone in your particular office have responsibility for identifying evidentiary value, or do you document everything as it is and turn it over to law enforcement?
It's documented as it is and turned over to law enforcement.
Let me ask you, ma'am, did you assist as a forensic investigator in the case involving the death of Jordan Davis?
Yes,
And when Jordan Davis's body was brought into the medical examiner's office, was a medical examiner number assigned to his autopsy and everything pertaining thereto?
yes, it was.
What number was assigned to that?
The number was 12-1982.
Let me ask you a couple of questions. When the medical examiner's office, all of you do work on a specific decedent, do you make notes in the course of your business?
Yes,
And is that done on every single autopsy and everything to do with that autopsy?
yes,
Are those notes kept or then put into a report that goes under the same report number you just designated?
yes,
And are those notes turned over to both the medical examiner handling the case as well as preserved for law enforcement later?
yes, the report is.
Would it aid you in your testimony to refer to those reports if you need to today?
Yes,
Okay. Let me ask you then, ma'am, if you can go back to that date, and in talking to this jury, under your direction or the direction of your division within that department, prior to the autopsy being performed, were there personal items removed from the clothing of Jordan Davis?
yes, there were items removed at login.
And were those items preserved and turned over to the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office homicide detectives?
Yes,
Let me ask you to refer specifically to the medical examiner office property receipt and ask you if the following personal items were collected from Jordan Davis's clothing. Let me start with states 178. Did you collect a keychain with a key?
Yes.
Did you collect a dollar?
I object and ask that the witness state what items were removed and from where rather than the counsel testifying.
All right, sustained.
Yes, sir. Did you collect currency from Jordan Davis?
Yes.
Can you tell the jurors the amount of currency you collected?
It was $1.25.
Did you collect any type of a bracelet or jewelry?
Yes.
What type? Tell the jurors what you collected.
There was a bracelet as well as earrings, which were 2 that had stones.
All right. What else was collected from Jordan Davis?
There was a cell phone and a knife
Did you collect any watches?
and a watch.
Okay. I'm going to show you several items, Ms. Wilson, if you don't mind turning that exhibit around. You want to make the witness step down from the stand?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Meacham, if you could come on this side of this table
Okay.
and make sure all the jurors can see you, but that the court reporter can also hear you. She'll need a microphone.
Your Honor, may I reposition?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Test Mike, I want you to come this side so the court reporter and
Okay.
the court can
Sorry.
see you. And can the jurors all see? Then, Investigator Meacham, let me show you, start with State's Exhibit 178. Is that the keychain you took from Jordan Davis's clothing?
Yes.
Okay, and just point it out to the jurors, please. And State's 179, is that the currency you just testified to that you took from Jordan Davis's clothing?
Yes.
Okay, and just point that out. States 180 in evidence, is that the bracelet you described on the stand as having come from Jordan Davis's clothing?
Yes.
States 181, is that the pocket knife that was taken from Jordan Davis's clothing?
Yes.
When it was removed from his clothing, was it in that closed position?
I do not know.
States 182, is that the change purse that was removed from Jordan Davis's clothing?
Yes.
States 183, is that the watch?
Yes.
And states 184, is that the cell phone?
Yes.
Now, just a moment with co-counsel.
Yes, ma'am.
And then Detective Meacham or Investigator Meacham, did all of those items get packaged individually under the medical examiner number that you testified to earlier?
Yes, they were packaged under the medical examiner number.
All right, thank you. You can resume the stand. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Hanania.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Well, you were asked whether you collected items from Mr. Davis's clothing. How did that clothing come to y'all?
The items came in with him from the hospital.
Okay. But packaged separately from the decedent himself?
I don't know how they were packaged.
And they were represented to you, however, from the hospital as being the belongings of Mr. Davis. Is that correct, ma'am?
They came in with him, yes.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
May she be excused?
She may, Your Honor.
Ms. Hanania.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
State's next witness.
Dr. Stacy Simons.
Dr. Simons, please.
Yeah, go start getting all that ready.
Good morning, doctor. If you'll come all the way to the front here for me, please. The clerk will administer the oath to you.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, doctor, if you need, did you need the other bag there or no?
If it's okay, I'll.
Okay, that's fine. Then just come on around this way. And if you need you can adjust that microphone so that, there you go. Speak loudly into it so everyone can hear you.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Corey.
Yes, Your Honor. State and spell your name for the record, please.
My name is Stacy Aileen Simons. That's STACEYALINESIMONS.
What is your current occupation?
I'm currently a fellow in oncologic surgical pathology at the Moffitt Cancer Center.
Are you a duly licensed physician and surgeon?
Yes, I am.
How long have you been licensed in the state of Florida?
Since 2011.
Are you licensed as a physician and surgeon in any other state?
Yes, I am in Washington State.
Where did you receive your medical degree?
In New York, at New York Medical College in 2006.
Can you please give this jury a brief understanding of your education and training?
Yes. So after completing medical school in 2006, I did a 4-year combined anatomic and clinical pathology residency, and that was done for the first year at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston and the last 3 years at the University of Washington in Seattle, and I finished that in 2010. After that, immediately went into a 1-year fellowship in forensic pathology with the Miami-Dade County Medical Examiner Department. And after that, after completing that in 2011, began working in Jacksonville for the medical examiner.
Were you an associate medical examiner here?
Yes, I was. I was an associate medical examiner from July of 2011 until my resignation in January of 2014.
What is pathology?
Pathology is a specialized branch of medicine where you are identifying and diagnosing disease and injury.
What is forensic pathology?
So that's the application of pathology to the law, and so a forensic pathologist receives extra training for myself, the 1-year fellowship, that will allow me to examine and evaluate cases and perform autopsies as needed in cases of suspicious death or violent death or sudden and unexpected death.
What is anatomic pathology?
So anatomic pathology, excuse me, is the study of the body tissues, the organs, skin, things like that.
What is clinical pathology?
And so usually in clinical pathology, we are studying those body fluids, and in both cases, we're using the tissues or the body fluids to diagnose disease or injury.
In your career conducting autopsies with medical examiners' offices here in the state of Florida, how many autopsies would you say you have either assisted in or performed yourself?
In total, within the state of Florida, probably about 1,000 cases total, and performing approximately 800 complete autopsies.
Have you ever testified as an expert in pathology and forensic pathology in the courts of the state of Florida?
Yes, I have.
How many times?
7 times in this district and 1 time in District 3.
Having testified, have you been then allowed to give an opinion to the jury as an expert in those same fields?
Yes.
How many times?
All.
Your Honor, at this time I would tender to this jury, I would tender Dr. Stacy Simons as an expert in forensic, anatomic, and clinical pathology.
Ms. Anania?
Your Honor, I'm asked before, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Dr. Simons. Now, you indicated that you were employed in a professional capacity as a medical examiner between 2011 and 2014. Is that right, ma'am?
That is correct.
Okay. You are not currently employed as a medical examiner, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And while you were working at the medical examiner's office here in Duval County, you would have been the least experienced of the associate medical examiners that were on staff at that time. Would that be fair to say, ma'am?
That's not correct.
And which of the associate medical examiners would have been less experienced than yourself?
At that time, I had equal experience as another associate, so there were 2 more junior staff, so that's correct, but I was not the least experienced.
Okay. And ma'am, and your prior career was in graphic arts, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Aside from yourself and the other junior associate medical examiner, you had done far fewer autopsies than the rest of your colleagues there at the medical examiner's office?
Yes, that's true.
And this was a holiday weekend that you were involved in this case?
Correct.
And as low man on the totem pole, you were on call?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
To that question.
Sustained.
Sidebar.
Sure. Ms. Court reporter. Ms. Anania?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Now, Dr. Simons, prior to your work in this particular case, you had used what are called probes or dowels only within the autopsy room or related to that. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
I'm sorry, excuse me. I used it in training purposes.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Not only in the autopsy room, but during other training.
All right. But it would be fair to say, ma'am, that that was, prior to your work in this case, you had used those dowels for indicating the path of wounds through soft and hard body tissue. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. And you had never used dowels in a vehicle in a homicide shooting scene. Would that be correct?
If I had specifically placed dowels? No.
Yes.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. And you had never used dowels in a vehicle that wasn't related to a shooting scene. Is that correct?
I have not placed dowels in a vehicle. That's correct.
And you haven't done it since your work in this case either. Would that be fair to say?
That would be fair to say, yes.
And you indicated that you had done it in training or observed it in training. That was during your 6-week internship at the Kings County Medical Examiner's Office?
No, that was not. I received during my 1-year fellowship various training in medical legal death investigation courses, and had been out on scenes and watched people take measurements, use probes, figure out angles. And so during that 1-year training and fellowship, although I was acting as an associate, what they called an assistant medical examiner in Miami, I was receiving on-the-job training as well as those specific courses.
But you yourself had never done that particular thing before?
That's true, yes.
Okay. And would it be fair to say, ma'am, that you don't recall actually, even as an observer or as a training, during your training, having responded to a scene that was a homicide that involved a shooting scene? Is that right?
No, that's not correct. I responded to multiple scenes that were homicide shootings. I'm not sure I understand your question.
Let's narrow this down, okay? While you were at the Miami-Dade Medical Examiner's Office, do you recall ever responding to the scene in which that scene involved a homicide and a shooting?
Yes.
Okay. Did you at any time during that training ever yourself use those dowels or probes to determine the path of a bullet that didn't involve the decedent, the body?
Objection, ask the name.
Overruled.
No.
And ma'am, you are not a certified accident reconstructionist, is that correct?
That is true, yes.
And you have not received any ballistics training?
Other than the basic standard ballistics training that goes along with the forensic pathology fellowship that I have received, I have not gotten any specialty certification in ballistics.
And you did not consult any authoritative texts regarding crime scene reconstruction, is that correct? In reference to your work in this case?
I don't understand your question.
In reference to your work in this case, did you consult any authoritative texts regarding crime scene reconstruction? Did you look at any books by any experts on the subject of crime scene reconstruction?
I would appreciate a moment to think about your question and be able to answer it.
Sure.
I read numerous texts during the course of my interpretation of the facts that I saw here, and numerous texts with regard to how bullets travel through hard objects and the paths that bullets might subsequently take during bodies. So that is my answer.
Okay, let me just clarify. I mean, when you say text regarding the path of bullets through hard objects, are you talking about hard objects that are part of
vehicle doors?
I'm sorry?
Vehicle doors.
Okay. And what were those texts that you consulted?
DeMayo's Gunshot Wound, and then the text by Liu and Matches, as well as Spitz and Fisher.
And which particular areas of those texts did you consult in reference to your preparation for this case?
I consulted specifically the areas in the DeMayo Gunshot Wound book that dealt with bullets passing through vehicles, bullets ricocheting, the reaction times of a person seeing a gun pointed at them and being able to move their body, and the appearance of bullets after they have been through windows or ricocheted. Probably other portions too. I can continue to think about it if you'd like.
And ma'am, have you ever published in this area?
No, I have not.
Have you ever taught in this area?
In the area of forensics, yes, I have taught.
In the area specifically of reconstructing a crime scene to determine...
Objection. I am not tendering her as an expert in crime scene reconstruction.
Sustained.
Have you ever taught on the subject of using the techniques of placing dowels or probes at a crime scene to determine the position of a decedent or physical objects in relation to that decedent?
No.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Any objection to her being declared an expert in the field of pathology and forensic pathology, Ms. Hanania?
Not on those areas, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Simons will now be declared to be an expert in the field of pathology and forensic pathology. And expert witnesses are like other witnesses with one exception. The law permits an expert witness to give his or her opinion. However, an expert's opinion is reliable only when given on a subject about which you believe he or she to be an expert. Like other witnesses, you may believe or disbelieve all or any part of an expert witness's testimony. Ms. Corey?
Yes, sir. Dr. Simons, remind this jury, how many autopsies had you performed as of November 2012?
Complete autopsies in my career, approximately 830 complete autopsies and about 1,050 cases that I evaluated with external examination.
And have you continued to study different areas of forensic pathology since November of 2012?
During my time as a medical examiner and with subsequent work that I've done on cases, yes, I have continued.
And have you done that type of work on this particular case?
Yes, I have.
Did that include studying photographs that had been prepared by the evidence technicians who were at the scene and at the warehouse on the night of this homicide?
Yes, it did.
And did it include pictures that you yourself took?
Yes, it did. Well, I did not take the pictures,
Well,
but
someone
that I
with you.
requested, yes.
You took someone with you, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And did that include being done at the warehouse where you went and actually looked at the vehicle in this case?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, let me take you back to the actual autopsy and ask you, is it the practice of our District 4 Medical Examiner's Office for each Associate Medical Examiner to fully document each autopsy as it is performed?
Yes, it is.
Are notes made as part of the normal course of your business?
Yes, they are.
Are those notes then put into an official autopsy report?
Yes.
Are photographs taken at the time of the autopsy?
Yes, they are.
Do those also become part of the official autopsy report?
Yes, they do.
Are items of physical evidence preserved and turned over to the law enforcement agency handling the case?
They are, yes.
And is an autopsy report forever kept at the medical examiner's office?
Yes, it is.
Was such a report made for Jordan Davis in this case?
Yes, it was.
Was there a specific medical examiner number assigned to this case?
Yes.
What was that number?
Your Honor, may I please refer back
Yes,
to my
ma'am.
notes? The case number assigned to Jordan Davis was 12-1982.
Have you had the opportunity to review the entire file?
Yes, I have.
And does it contain all of the work done by all of the persons who work under your auspices? For example, the investigators at the medical examiner's
Yes, that's
office?
correct.
When was the body of Jordan Davis brought to the medical examiner's office?
Jordan Davis's body was logged in on the morning of November 24th at 1:14 a.m.
What was the time of his death?
His time of death as recorded at the hospital was on November 23rd at 8:15 p.m.
And at which hospital was he pronounced dead?
And that was at Shands Hospital.
Where is that located in relation to the medical examiner's office?
It's a separate entity from us, but it is across the street.
Was there evidence of medical intervention to Jordan Davis's body?
Yes, there was.
Can you describe briefly what that means to the jury?
Yes, so medical intervention are things that are done either by fire rescue or by hospital personnel in the emergency room when they are trying to save somebody's life. And the things that I saw were very basic. There was a line that they could put fluids into Jordan Davis's body that was in the front of his left lower leg. There was also a tube that was inserted through his mouth and into his windpipe to make sure that there was an airway to allow them to assist in breathing. And there was also there were 2 chest tubes, and chest tubes are tubes that are placed into the side of the chest cavity to either remove blood or possibly reinflate the lungs when there's been injury to the lungs.
Your Honor, prior to showing Dr. Simon's States 138, I would ask the court to read the stipulation of Jordan Davis's identity.
Any objection, Ms. Hanania?
No, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the state of Florida, the defendant and his attorney hereby stipulate to the following. The body examined on November 24th and 25th of 2012 by Dr. Stacy A. Simons, bearing the medical examiner's case number of 12-1982, is that of Jordan Davis.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Simons, if you'll look at your monitor, I'm going to show you States Exhibit 138 and ask you, ma'am, do you recognize this to be the young man on whom you performed an autopsy on November 24th and 25th, 2012?
Yes, I do.
Before conducting the autopsy, was Jordan Davis measured for height?
Yes, he was.
What height was recorded for him?
That was a height of 5 feet, 11 inches.
What weight was recorded for Jordan Davis?
We recorded a weight for Jordan Davis in what we call an as-is state, and that means that the weight was taken along with clothing, the body bag, and the interventions, including sheets and blankets from the hospital, and so the total weight as-is was 145 pounds.
Did that total weight include all of the clothing and blankets?
Included all of the clothing and blankets.
All right. Where was the autopsy conducted?
The autopsy was conducted at 2100 Jefferson Street in the morgue.
In addition to the autopsy that was performed, was a toxicology screen done?
Yes, it was.
Explain the purpose of a toxicology.
Sidebar.
Yes, please.
The objection's overruled. Go right ahead, Ms. Corey.
Yes, Your Honor. Tell the jury the purpose of a toxicology screen.
The purpose of a toxicology screen is to analyze body fluids to see if there are any drugs or alcohol in the body. Now that could be illegal drugs or over-the-counter drugs or prescribed drugs. We look to see if there's any contribution to the death. And in the state of Florida, when there is a death within 12 hours of a violent injury, it's required by law to perform a toxicology screen.
Were any drugs found in Jordan Davis's system?
No, they were not.
Was any alcohol found in Jordan Davis's system?
No, it was not.
Were there external wounds to the body of Jordan Davis?
Yes, there were.
Did those wounds continue to the internal portions of his body?
Yes, they did.
What was the cause of Jordan Davis's death?
Multiple gunshot wounds.
What was the manner of his death?
Homicide.
When was the autopsy performed of the external portions of his body?
So the external portions of my examination were performed on the 24th of November, and I performed the internal examination on the 25th of November.
Was Jordan Davis clothed when he was brought into the medical examiner's office?
Clothing was with him, but he was not clothed.
Okay. And that's as he was transported from Shands Hospital?
That's correct.
Okay. Were photos taken to document the clothing of Jordan Davis?
Yes, they were.
I'm going to now show you a series of photographs, Dr. Simons, so the jury can see. State's Exhibit 139, can you describe that to the jury?
So this is a photograph of after we have taken the clothing and the sheets, paper bags off of the body tray. We put them onto a clean sheet. We photograph this and then take additional photographs of relevant defects. And before we're through, we take the technicians take that clothing and put it into a drying cabinet along with the paper so that all evidence is preserved.
And was this ultimately turned over to the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office?
Yes, it was.
Let me show you States 140 in evidence, ma'am, and tell the jurors the purpose of this photograph. It's a composite photo.
Okay. This is what we refer to as overall photographs, and this is this in particular is two photographs put together of Jordan Davis's body after he has been cleaned and the interventions have been removed. One of the benefits for us here today about this photograph is it demonstrates what we call the anatomic position, and the anatomic position is what we use to refer to wounds and their relationship to the body. So the anatomic position is when somebody is laying on their back with their arms at their side, and you can see roughly the same position for Jordan Davis.
All right. Dr. Simons, was each item of clothing packaged separately?
Yes, it was.
All right, I'm going to start, and Your Honor, may I have either Ms. Wolfson or Mr. Guy assist me with this so I can stay at the podium? Mr. Guy, I'm going to start with 171, which has already been shown to the jury. All right. Dr. Simons, is States 171 the hat that was previously depicted in the photograph?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Mr. Guy, if you could just... Yeah.
Where do you want that, Ms. Corey?
Well, I think it's going to be hard to spread it all out, so let me just ask him to bring the rest of the jury, I believe, has seen that, so let's just bring the next items. 172 is the tank top, please. And Judge, all of these are entered into evidence, so I'm going to call out what they are, unless the court instructs.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes, sir.
These have all, ladies and gentlemen, been previously admitted into evidence just to streamline things, so, and again, you'll be able to take all of these things back to the jury room to look at them further if you need.
Dr. Simons, can you describe what this is to the jury?
So that is a tank top that came to us with Jordan Davis.
And when you said that you examined clothing to look for defects, can you explain to the jury what defects are?
Yes, so we look for anything that might indicate that a bullet has passed through the clothing while that clothing was on somebody.
And is States 172 one of the items that you looked at?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Mr. Guy, if you could put this one over here, please. States 173 in evidence.
What is that for?
173 T-shirt.
Dr. Simons, excuse me, we'll get back to my phone.
Dr. Simons, is that the T-shirt that was documented in the previous photograph?
Yes, it is.
Did you examine Jordan Davis's T-shirt for evidence of a bullet passing through it?
Yes, I did.
Okay, if we could just set that one on the ground over here, please. States 174, the jacket. Dr. Simon, States 174, the black jacket that was documented in the photo as having come in with the body of Jordan Davis?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and did you examine that as well?
Yes, I did.
For defects?
I
Thank
did.
you. Just next to it. State 175, doctor, did you review the boxer shorts that came in with Jordan Davis's body?
Yes, I did review boxer shorts.
Okay. Now, doctor, on any of this clothing, did you find evidence of where medical personnel had cut the clothing off of his body?
Yes, I did.
From your experience as an associate medical examiner, are you able to tell the difference between a defect to clothing that is from the result of medical necessity versus a gunshot entry?
Yes, there might be cases where the defects from medical intervention are very extensive and they can cut through sometimes bullet holes. We try and do our best to find when that has occurred, but otherwise we look for holes that are in the vicinity of wounds, and we try and match those up. And in this case, I was able to find that.
And in States 175, did you look at these boxer shorts to determine whether or not bullets had passed through there?
I did, yes.
Okay. States 176 is a pair of shorts. Dr. Simon, the same questions. Did you look at the shorts? Are these the shorts that came in with Jordan Davis that were previously documented in the medical examiner's photograph?
Yes, they are.
And did you look at these shorts to see whether or not there was evidence of gunshots passing through it?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And the last exhibit. Your Honor, is that permissible to stack them like that?
Yes, ma'am, that's fine.
And I'll just need them walk through this witness. Last exhibit, 177. Dr. Simon, are these the long pants with the belt that came in with the body of Jordan Davis?
Yes, they are.
And do those pants show, and Mr. Guy, do you mind bringing that out to the middle, please? I have several questions about that exhibit. Okay, I'm sorry, you're right. And thank you for that. Dr. Simons, with regard to States 177, and in combination with the photograph, let me take you back to a photograph right now, States 140 evidence. In your experience as a medical examiner, do you determine whether or not a body type is of a certain build?
Yes, but we can make a generalization as to a build type.
And how do you describe it in general terms? Do you use small, medium, large, or slight, heavy, or whatever?
It depends on the context, but I would describe Jordan Davis as being of a slim build.
Okay. And let me ask you then, in States 177, do those pants appear to have been the pants on a slim-built person?
Yes,
And did you also examine those for the entry of gunshots?
I did examine those.
And did you see evidence of medical intervention on these items of clothing?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, may Dr. Simons step down, and if the court doesn't mind, and we can leave these here for now, I have more questions on them, and then we'll move them?
Sure,
Okay,
that's fine.
so thank you, Mr. Guy, Ms. Wilson. Dr. Simons, can you please step down from the stand and step over to the shirt that's on the table here? And you'll need a microphone.
We have one coming for you.
I apologize, Ms. Corey, but if number 140 is not immediately necessary,
I've got it.
thank you. Thank you.
If you'll step over to this side and face our court reporter, who you now cannot see, so I need you to stay very loud. Step over here, please. Face the jurors and speak towards the court reporter. And then can you show on this particular exhibit the difference between medical intervention? Do you see any signs of medical intervention on that shirt?
Medical intervention in this case would be, an example would be this line going straight up on the left side.
And again, can you remind the jurors what the purpose of that would be? What was the purpose for medical interveners to do that?
So, you know, we're looking at Jordan Davis's death from hindsight. But when people are there trying to save his life, they're not worried about whether or not he's going to die because they assume that they're going to be able to save his life. So the first thing that they do is they take off the clothing. They're looking for injuries. They need to find these injuries and take action to try and keep him alive. And so we end up having to, you know, sort through it later. And, you know, of course, we know they're doing their job.
All right. Doctor, starting with this item of clothing, did you find evidence of a gunshot defect to this shirt?
Yes, I did. In this case, so what you're looking at is the front of the tank top. So that would be Jordan Davis's left side, and here on the right side, behind another apparent cut, is a hole that's consistent with a bullet hole.
If you could turn that briefly. And doctor, again, so all the jurors can see, can you point to the evidence of the gunshot on that shirt? With regards to any other of the items of clothing that you've already testified to, did you find evidence of gunshot entries into any of those items of clothing?
I did find evidence of entries in the boxer shorts.
Okay, I need to identify that for the record. That would be States 175. And can you show the jurors where you found evidence of gunshot defects?
Yes, so...
and Mr.
Guy, you
Guy
want to
can
help
assist
her
you.
with that exhibit?
So you're looking at the front right now, and the gunshot defects were on the back, on what we refer to as the seat of the pants. And we can see right here a hole.
Doctor, can you
Just a minute, can everybody see that as best you can? I know there's a little distance there, ladies and gentlemen, but
And doctor, can you again point to where that defect is? You said
Yes,
seat of the pants.
so-
Can you explain that further?
So this would be the area where his buttocks are coming out, and you've got the thigh, you know, so it's just the part where the buttocks meet the thigh on the right side.
All right. And what about with regard to the T-shirt, doctor, which is in States Exhibit 173?
Okay.
And Mr. Guy will help you with that as well. And let me ask you again, is there evidence of medical intervention
Yes,
with
there-
cutting the shirt off?
There
Can you
are-
show the jurors where those lines are?
There are several cuts, and so you have one that's running up the right side and to the right sleeve, and up the left side to the left sleeve, and up to the left collar, the left side of the collar as well.
Doctor, in attempting to save a human being's life, is it possible for rescue personnel or hospital personnel to try to preserve the clothing as it was exactly?
No.
Okay. Then can you go ahead and show the jurors if you found, despite the cuts, outside of the cuts, did you find evidence of a gunshot entry?
Yes, on the right side, there's a round hole.
On the right-hand side?
On the right-hand side, on the right side of the body, sort of middle of the chest-abdomen area.
All right. And doctor, with regard to the remaining items of evidence, did you find evidence of gunshots?
Yes, I did find evidence of gunshots in the blue shorts with the W.
All right. And I think you can just step back to those. It's right there, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Tell the jurors where you found evidence of gunshot.
So these were, again, on the back, in a similar position to where I described on the underwear, kind of on the right thigh, below where the buttocks and the thigh would have met.
And doctor, and I understand, but for purposes to demonstrate to the jury, can you just show briefly on your own body where that would have been?
Yes. So we're looking at me from behind, and we're talking about where my finger is pointing. So this is an area just below where the buttocks are and at the top of the thigh.
And did you say it was consistent with the boxer shorts?
Yes.
Now, you can't tell this jury which pair of pants was worn on top of the other, is that correct?
I can't, no.
Okay. Now, with regard to the long pants, which is State's Exhibit 177, doctor, and if you don't mind, just leave it there and step over to there.
Okay.
Can you show the jurors evidence of that gunshot entry?
Well, so on the pants, I didn't find a definitive gunshot entry point. I saw some defects on the back pocket and on the upper right waistband. One of the problems that we have with clothing is we don't know exactly how they're positioned on the body at any given time. You know, we've all seen people who, let's say, get hit by a car and their shoe gets left behind, or, you know, sometimes the clothing gets twisted. So in this particular case, I could not find a hole that lines up, but because of the interventions, it didn't strike me as anything unusual.
All right. And doctor, so that we can get the clothing put away to go on with your testimony, is there anything about the wounds you found to Jordan Davis's body and the gunshot wounds of entry that is inconsistent with the gunshots you've described in this clothing?
No, nothing that's inconsistent.
May we take 1 minute to put it
Yes,
all over
ma'am.
in the corner? Thank you. And you can resume the stand, Dr. Simons. Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Simons, can you please explain to the jury how you assign numbers to gunshot wounds of entry?
So they're what I consider to be arbitrarily assigned, meaning that they don't have any reflection on the order that the bullets might have hit the body. I assign them in a way that I can organize my report. And
do you start with a particular area of the body?
Well, you know, in general, we try and go from top to bottom. That's a typical way to do it. And then if you have wounds that are at a similar level, you decide from there.
How many total gunshot wounds of entry did you find to Jordan Davis's body?
3.
Let me start with what you determined to be gunshot wound number 1. Can you describe that gunshot wound?
Yes. I'm just going to refer back to my notes. And so the first wound that I described was what I called a penetrating gunshot wound of the abdomen and chest. And did you want me to describe the wound itself?
I would like you to describe the wound itself with regard to where it entered Jordan Davis's body.
Okay. And so this entered Jordan Davis's body approximately 59 centimeters below the top of the head and 22 centimeters to the right of midline, meaning off to the right from this being midline.
All right. And can you describe the size of that wound as far as the diameter of the wound?
Yes. And before I do that, I just would like to just explain one term that I'm going to use, and that's the term is abrasion. And an abrasion for a forensic pathologist just means a scrape. It's purely just a scrape. And so the total size of the wound, including the abrasion, was 1 5/10 centimeters by 1 0/10 centimeters, so 1 centimeter.
And were you able to describe the defect as far as its actual shape?
Yes, this was an oval defect.
And can you explain why that's significant, if it is at all, to the jury, as opposed to, for example, a round defect?
Sure. So I'll start by describing a round defect. It's a little more straightforward. So if you look at my hand as something that a bullet is about to enter, and my finger coming towards it straight on is a bullet, we see that it's going to hit and penetrate through in a way that everything is nice and even and uniform. And so as that bullet pushes through the skin and scrapes along the skin and makes an abrasion, that abrasion is going to be a circular ring because it's coming straight towards the skin. But when we have an oval abrasion, there could be two reasons, or a combination of two reasons. The first is that that bullet travels into the body at an angle, or what we call a tangent. And so you'll see that the top portion is barely going to be affected by the bullet at all, but the bottom portion is going to have a larger scrape as that bullet pushes through. Another reason we can have an oval defect is if the bullet itself is deformed before it hits the body, as opposed to just being a cylinder, a nice bullet-shaped cylinder. And in this case, I do believe that both came into play.
Dr. Simons, were you able to document the damage to the internal portions of Jordan Davis's body that this particular gunshot wound did?
Yes.
Can you please describe that to the jury?
Yes, and so another term that we use is perforating, and perforating just means to make a hole through something as it passes through. And so the bullet perforated the skin and then went through the right 10th rib, the right side of the diaphragm, the right side of the liver, or the right lobe of the liver, went again through the diaphragm on the other side, and then went through the right lower lung lobe, went through the aorta, and the aorta
wound tract on Jordan Davis's body.
Yes, and so the track was directed from right to left and upward. But we also try and figure out if there's any front-to-back deviation of that bullet, and in this case, I was not able to tell if there had been front-to-back deviation.
All right. I'm going to show you a series of photographs, Doctor, so you can relate these to the jury. States Exhibit 141, and if you touch that monitor, you can circle. Show the jurors the gunshot wound of entry to Jordan Davis's body.
Okay, that is right here.
All right. And the other things in this photograph have no bearing, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So did you find any other evidence of gunshot wounds to this full side of his body?
No.
Okay. And that's the size that you described previously, I believe?
That's correct.
Thank you. States 142, can you explain that to the jury?
Yes, so now what you're looking at is that oval wound, which has an abrasion, and so you see the scrape as a dark purple circle. And so we have an area where the circle is not quite as big on one side as it is on the other, and that helps demonstrate the possibility of the bullet coming in at an angle. Can I erase just by touching? Or?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Well,
I don't think I have the eraser. Oh, there we go. Okay. And so the other important parts about this is the area where the bullet poked through the skin, which is irregular, and I'm going to trace around that right now. So instead of being round, it had just kind of an irregular shape to it. So between that and some scrapes elsewhere in the abrasion itself, this signifies to me that there had been damage to the bullet before it entered, and that's consistent with a bullet passing through a door.
Dr. Simons, is there any evidence of soot or stippling to this gunshot wound of entry?
There are not, but there are reasons why that would not apply in this case. Soot or stippling are features that we look at to see if we can tell how far away a gun or a shooter was from the person who was shot, but they're only found on a wound if the wound has nothing blocking it. So in this particular case, we had several layers of clothing blocking that wound, and the clothing is dark, so we might not see it on that. But in addition, blocking the clothing was the door that the bullet had passed through.
All right. And now, Doctor, tap the screen, and then I'll go on to the next picture. Thank you. States 143 in evidence. Was this to document your measurements?
This is, and that's just a standardized ruler. It's called an ABFO scale, and it's used so that if we ever wanted to make an enlargement, we can use those centimeter marks and blow it up and compare it with something.
States 144. Doctor, tell the jurors why we are showing them this photograph.
So this is an X-ray of the upper part of Jordan Davis's body, and it's of value for a couple of reasons. I can show you where the bullet lodged, and also show you the path of injury, and then explain to you some of the injuries. So this X-ray is again taken in the anatomic position with Jordan Davis lying on his back, and so what you're looking at on the right side of this picture is actually the left side of Jordan Davis's body, and so we see an L, and I'll put an R on the other side just as a reminder. And then keep in mind that what you're looking at right here, this solid object, is the bullet. Now this is Jordan Davis's left arm and left collarbone, right arm and right collarbone. Each of these that you're seeing is a rib, and what you're seeing in the center is the spinal column. Here is Jordan Davis's heart, and between the heart and the spinal column is the aorta. Now, we've got a defining line that runs along here, and that's that diaphragm muscle that I mentioned, and that separates the chest cavity, which is above the line, from the abdominal cavity, which is below the line, and that's where the liver sits. And then we have the chest cavities. We have the left chest cavity, which extends around here, and the right chest cavity, which extends around here.
Doctor, if you'll hold on for just a moment, we'll come back to this photograph. Let me go on, though, to ask you, did you recover the projectile from Jordan Davis's chest area?
Yes, I did.
All right, let me show you a series of photographs. States 145. Tell the jury what that is.
So this is a photograph of that bullet that I just circled for you that I removed from the left chest wall.
Okay. States 146. Is that the same projectile with each view?
Yes, it is.
And Doctor, tell the jurors why you document each view. Is this a biohazardous item of evidence?
Well, this, it does have blood and body tissues on it. We clean that off, but we need to send that for analysis. We document this so that we have a record for our own reference to see what the degree of damage to that bullet was, or what the shape was, color, things like that. And so we shoot it at multiple angles to get that frame of reference.
All right. Doctor, let me show you then what's entered into evidence as states 190. Is that what I'm looking for? Have just a second, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my computer just shut off. States Exhibit 190. And let me ask you, Dr. Simons, is this the projectile that you recovered from Jordan Davis's chest?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And did you put your markings on that?
Is my packaging inside?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, that's my original packaging.
All right, thank you, ma'am. And may I pass this to the jury, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Simons, I'm going to ask you two things about this projectile recovered from Jordan Davis's upper left chest and the wound track through his body. First, I'm going to ask you on the actual photograph of the x-ray, can you please draw the wound path the best you can on that photograph?
Yes, so where the bullet entered is a little bit below the bottom portion of this x-ray, so I'm going to actually start, if you were to point your finger to the lower, point your left finger to the lower left corner, just below the x-ray, that's where I'm starting. And so it enters and comes up through the rib, the hemidiaphragm, and the liver, comes back out through the hemidiaphragm and perforates the right lower lung lobe, then goes through again, as I mentioned, the aorta, so now we're between the heart and the spinal column, perforates the left lower lung lobe and continues on, and then this fuzzy area of rib that you can see is a fracture of the rib. The bullet exits and comes to rest here, or exits the chest cavity, excuse me, and comes to rest in the chest wall.
And doctor, again, the orientation of this x-ray is with Jordan Davis on his back, is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. Then I'm also going to ask you to use this pink plastic dowel. And if you would stand up and just hold this to you in the same direction as that while in a standing position. May she come out in front of the jury, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Just on the front of your...
Okay. So again, at that lower margin of the chest, upper margin of the abdomen, coming through and coming to rest somewhere around the armpit.
Okay. All right. Thank you. You can resume the stand and just keep that dowel with you for just a moment. Dr. Simons, was gunshot wound number 1 alone fatal to Jordan Davis?
Yes.
How long could he possibly have lived with that gunshot wound?
No more than minutes.
Okay. And now states 159, if I could go to that. I don't know what that's about. Give me 1 second. I don't think they're supposed to be in the order for questions. No. Dr. Simons, tell the jurors why this picture is important to their purposes, or to your purposes, I meant.
So this is a picture of Jordan Davis's liver, and the benefit of this photo is the injury to this organ, which really demonstrates that diagonal track that I just showed you with the pink probe and showed you on the x-ray. So what you're looking at is the backside of Jordan Davis's liver, and here is the top portion that would be closest to the head. This is the bottom portion that would be closest to the feet. This is the right side and the left side. And so, as I showed you in the x-ray, we had a bullet that was going from the lower on the right side to higher on the left side. So now it's passed through the liver, as I described, with the diaphragm on both sides, heading up into the area where the right lung would be, passing through where the aorta is, and continuing on upward. And so this demonstrates that track through a single organ.
And Doctor, when you were determining possible positions for Jordan Davis within that vehicle, was this picture important to your determination of that as well?
Very important. It really helps identify the position of Jordan Davis's body relative to what we know about the way the bullet traveled through that door, and so it helps us know what position he was in.
And is that because this organ remains stationary in the body?
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
I'll rephrase.
Okay.
Tell the jurors why that is.
So the liver, it takes up a large portion of the right side, and it's anchored by the diaphragm, that big muscle. And so there is little movement of that organ, and it kind of stays put within, as opposed to the heart, which can swing like a pendulum, or other organs which might have a little more movement, like the intestines, things like that.
All right. Doctor, going on to gunshot wound number 2, can you describe that to the jurors, please?
Yes. So gunshot wound number 2 is what I called a penetrating gunshot wound of the left thigh. And that is a wound that was approximately 92 centimeters above the left heel and 1 centimeter to the left of midline.
Were you able to determine a wound track for that particular wound?
Yes, I was. And so that wound went only through muscle and soft tissue before coming to rest in a portion of the thigh. It did not exit the body. And that went from right to left and slightly front to back, but I could, again, not tell if there was an upward or downward deviation. So in this case, it's just important to remember that we're talking about the left leg, but it's still moving from the right side of the body to the left side.
All right. And what was the entrance size on that particular wound?
So this was a 1 9/10 centimeter by 7/10 centimeter defect with abrasion, and again, this was an oval shape.
Was this wound alone fatal?
No, this was not. I do believe that it was debilitating, but not fatal alone.
Did you find evidence of fragments of the bullet within this wound?
So at the entrance, there was a fragment of metal that I collected that's consistent with the bullet that I then collected from inside the thigh.
All right. Let's go ahead and start with that then, and let me show you States 147 evidence. Explain that to the jurors, Dr. Simons.
And so what you're looking at is a close-up of the entrance wound that I just described, and there is so this would be the entrance wound, and this small piece of metal is consistent with a piece from that bullet.
All right. And then States 148, Doctor, explain that to the jury.
And so this is my packaging, and I designated that little piece of metal as a fragment from the left groin skin.
States 149, can you explain that to the jury?
Yeah, I think I can explain it on the photo, but if allowed, it might be a little bit easier for me to orient the jury by showing on myself what we're talking about.
All right, let me then go ahead and show you States 191 in evidence and ask you, Dr. Simons, is this that tiny piece of metal that you found at the entrance to gunshot wound number 2?
Yes, can't see all sides, but it's consistent with that. And this is my packaging.
All right. Hey, Dr. Simons, step down from the stand.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And Dr. Simons, if you could just briefly show the jury the orientation to the entry of Jordan Davis's body. Did you want to step over here?
Hang on one second.
Young man, just move it first.
Yes, ma'am. With the court order.
Yes,